The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio. Want the real story behind the sound bites and headlines? Let's find the facts. Remember, it's not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. You are not paranoid or confused. You just need to know.
Welcome, everybody. Another week of Need to Know on TKR. Kip Keefer with you, as per usual, at our general time where we put this together on Monday mornings. And it's a perfect time for the summary of the week's events, things to look forward to, or look ahead to, I should say. And other things that just happen to pop into my head, my pointy little head that gathers all kinds of information during the week. And this is your chance to be on hand as I empty those thoughts out and hopefully distribute a nugget or two that may enhance your thought process. Again, if you're a first-time listener, I repeat this every 3 or 4 shows. I am not here to tell you what to think. I am here to give you information to help you craft your own thoughts and conclusions and opinions, because at the end of the day, that's what living in this great country, the United States of America, is all about. It's First Amendment rights to free speech, free expression, free thought. And too many of us are kind of bullied into a corner of not speaking our minds, of not being comfortable with expressing our own views. And that, to me, is a tragedy. I think it's imperative for this country to work that people can freely express their ideas, their opinions, and their conclusions on all things, and not be concerned at being chastised or berated by somebody who shares a different opinion. That's not how this is supposed to work. It's supposed to be dialogue. It's supposed to be a system-based. The genius of the American system is it is based on compromise. It is based on, I don't get everything I like or want or believe in, and you don't either. We find a common ground. We settle for we fight the battles that we think are imperative, but we give ground and allow people with different opinions and different ideas to have some victories of their own. And that's what compromise, that's the definition of the word. And that's the kind of the thing we've lost right now. This is day 27 today of the government shutdown. And the government shutdown really is kind of ridiculous. As I told you, the very first day it went into effect, there was not panic in the streets. Planes didn't start falling out of the sky. Your internet still operated. Your car still started. The government being, quote, shut down, the federal government we're talking about, is nearly nothing more than a political stunt. It happens a lot of times when the party that's not in power throws a hissy fit because they are not at the table making the policy of the country. And, you know, the irony of the whole thing is the fact that the Democrats are taking this stand now. They're demanding that continuing to fund the government includes about 1,000 more pages of what right now is a 24-page agreement that just basically says that until we can get all this budget stuff ironed out, we're going to extend what we already approved last year to continue to pay government workers, to fund government programs, to do the things that federal government provides. And the Democrat Party, who has been mostly in power over the last, 12 years, they have been actually 16 years. We'll go back to 2008. When Barack Obama was first elected. The Democrats have controlled the White House in that era most of those years, with the exception of Trump from 2016, 2020, and Trump right now. But In that time, there were 13 of these resolutions passed to keep the government operating because Congress is so divided they can't do their job. And the biggest job Congress has, this cannot be escape any of your grasp. The biggest job they have is to work together during the year, figure out what the government programs and funding need to be for the next year, and they just to make sure they get this done on a timely basis. The laws of our land require that the Congress, the House of Representatives, and the Senate both come up with programs to fund all government programs, the budget for the next year, by September 30th. That is officially the end of each fiscal year for the United States government. And guess what? September 30th has come and gone. I don't know exactly what the number is, but I think it's getting close to 20 straight years that they have not done their job. We're at 18 or 19. They have not done their job. They have not finished their work by September 30th. There's still disagreement. There's still delay. And so what's happened 13 times in the Biden administration alone from 2020 through 2024, 13 continuing resolutions. You'll hear them referred to in government circles as CRs. The CRs have been adopted and voted on by both sides and passed to continue to be able to pay federal workers and provide government programs. This time, this is the Democrats who, in the Biden administration, passed 13 of these resolutions, including one in February of this year, earlier in the year, that was backed heartily by the leader of the Democrat Party in the Senate, New York Senator Chuck Schumer. Schumer led a contingent of other Democrats to go against the radical left wing of the Democrat Party, who wanted to shut the country down, to inflict pain on the new president, Donald Trump, and be pointing the fingers, because when this has happened before, it's the Republicans that always get the blame because typically they're in the minority. That's not the case here. The election of November 5th of last year, Donald Trump became president in charge of the White House. The Senate went by a margin of 6 senators to the Republicans. And it was a clean sweep, a hat trick, because the Republican candidates had a very slim majority, but they do have the majority in the House. So it's all 3 branches of the federal administration, the executive at the White House and the legislative in both houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate, all Republican controlled. Now, remember this phrase, because I know you've heard it. Elections have consequences, and those consequences are the people have spoken, the votes are cast. One party that has all of the cards in terms of the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives holds the power. The minority party that lost those elections, and the Democrats lost historically this last time as a clean sweep took place by the Republicans. That is what democracy is defined as. And when that happens, the consequences of that election is the party in control is going to have even beyond the upper hand, because the minority party can obstruct, delay, whatever kind of tactics they can use, but they cannot prevent the policy of the party in power, duly elected by the votes of the people of the United States. All they can do is try and get in the way and stall things and try and create some public unrest. And boy, oh boy, has this Democrat Party in this calendar year of 2025 done everything imaginable to make it as difficult for the new Trump administration and the Republican Congress to initiate their policies, which were resoundingly approved through the election by the American people. So it's been this giant, I compared it last week to the mythical organization on the old program Get Smart. Chaos. Chaos has risen from the ashes of the 2024 election, and the rubble that was the Democrat Party that had this grand vision of taking this country way left and changing everything. Remember Barack Obama's election night declaration that the seas are rising and the sky is bursting out, and this is the beginning of the transformation of America. Well, the transformation of America started to stall when the reality set in for the American people of what these radicals wanted to do with your country. They wanted to take away the three founding principles that we talk about all the time here, the founding principles that defined Charlie Kirk, the leader of Turning Point USA, one of the most brilliant young people this country's produced in many, many years. It caused him to be assassinated back a couple of months ago in Utah because he was talking about this country moving forward has got to abandon this detour down the socialist leftist roadway and get back to the things this country was founded upon. And it was three basic principles, and they're not. And if these are defined as radical, we are all in a complete lunacy period. Massive lunacy warrants need to be sworn out to so many people if this is the case, because if these are controversial, we are lost, folks, because this country was founded by our forefathers and the people who risked everything to come here to this new land and roll the dice on this audacious experiment where it's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And those three principles were religion, God, choice of religion, freedom to make your choices on what you worship and how you want to do it. It was completely a foundational part of this entire country's foundation. So we have God, we have country, a constitution, a stated mission statement that lays out what the principles of this country are, and it's a living, breathing document that can be amended and brought up to the times. And if you go back and actually read, and I'm not going to sit here and ask people to go back and read the entire Constitution. That would be quite the undertaking. But read certain passages if you have time. I mean, it's almost like the first premise. I'm not going to tell you to go back and read both the Old Testament and the New Testament of the Bible, but we read passages. We look for things that inspire us or insulate us from what is haunting us, guidance, principles, etc. The Constitution, from the country standpoint, serves the same purpose as the Bible, the Word of God, and freedom of religion. So that. And again, it's not exclusive to the Bible. If you're a person of the Islamic faith in this country, or Hindu, or whatever religion that you practice, the Judeo-Christian principles this country is founded on are just the founding principles, but it gives you the opportunity to practice any religion that you want. That's constitutionally guaranteed. So these are things that in the 1700s, these were radical ideas. These people that came up with all this. These people emanated from systems of royalty and kings, and it's handed down through families for generations and years and years. And these people thought they were godlike and could tell everybody how they could live their life and what they could do. These people said, enough of this. We're going to go found our own country, that it's individual liberty and freedom and all of the choices that we can make. and it's going to be backed by God and country. And that's the first two premises. The third one is the other big target of the leftist movement now, the family unit, the American nuclear family, a mother, a father, and children. And a lot of children is what a lot of people that want to go back to our original foundation want to encourage in a time where the birth rate is dramatically down. It's a lot more challenging, of course, economically for young people. And it's also a time, though, that young people have, unfortunately, instead of being educated, have been indoctrinated into me first attitudes, and I exist, therefore I am owed something. And that is the train of thought that is really taking us down a bad pathway, because, again, the selflessness and the sacrifice, yes, having a family is a step forward, and it absolutely changes your life. But anybody listening that has been brainwashed into thinking that it's not the real meaning of life, you're being horribly cheated, because no matter what I have been able to accomplish individually or personally, the fact that I have a couple of sons that I can look in the eye and just stand back from a distance and see what they're accomplishing and what they're all about, and know that that I've made a real contribution to the world. There's nothing that replaces that. And the whole foundation of family is such an important thing. These leftists want your daddy, your mother that's nursing and nurturing you. They want it to be the government, and that is not what this country is founded on. This country is God. This country is American principles, the Constitution, and the American family. And if those things are evil, and if those things are counter to what you believe, you're allowed to believe that. But you're not able to lash out and burn things down and loot and it disrupt law enforcement officers, everything we're watching every day in this country. It is just a tragedy to see what's happening when law enforcement agency from the ICE organization, which is, of course, customs enforcement, immigration customs enforcement. These are law officers with warrants to go out and round up people that are in the country illegally. Now, I've preached this before on the show. We all have to listen carefully and think about this. The laws of the land, the Constitution, as I said, is a living, breathing document, as are the laws of our country. If the elections are going a different way, and you don't like what is happening in the country, it's your responsibility as a citizen to rally your fellow citizens and get the people in office that you believe represent your best interests. That's what this is all about. To hear this leftist bunch of jackals scream that Trump is tearing down our democracy. He's trying to be a dictator. We're doomed. It's all over with. Democracy has to win out. Democracy spoke on November 5th of last year. They don't like what the democracy verdict was. They don't like it one bit, because now all of a sudden this leftist wayward vision for this country has gone awry and it's out of their grasp. The voters spoke. We don't want you guys making any more decisions. We lived with 12 of the last 16 years with you in charge, and look where we've gotten. It is absolutely a cesspool that they were leading you into. And again, the indoctrination of our children, which is the founding absolute square one approach for any kind of Marxist socialist government. It's first of all to corrupt the minds of the young people, to make them believe that the system is against them, that they have no chance to succeed, and nothing can be further from the truth. The American dream is alive and well, and anybody who's been corrupted and bamboozled into believing otherwise simply is not looking at established history of this country. Your hard work and your diligence, you got to get a break or two along the line. But the first thing is everybody has unique talents and skills, and everybody has the capacity to absorb and learn and become proficient at a wide range of skills and personal strengths that they have. And this new society, this leftist movement, has convinced people that you don't have a chance. You don't have any, you can't succeed in this. The American dream is dead. It's only available to rich people. I mean, it couldn't be further from the truth. I'm not going to give you a biography of my life, but I'm going to tell you I started with nothing. I absolutely started with nothing. The skill that I had was I was a pretty good talker and a pretty quick thinker. So I absolutely was very fortunate to send a tape. My father, who was a devoted guy who only child, kind of a narcissist, to be honest. God bless my departed dad, but he was big into into whatever kind of venture he could get into. He was a pretty strong womanizer. He was a avid, enthusiastic gambler. He just was a guy who kind of liked to live his life in the fast lane. But my father had taken me as a young man to racetracks around the country, particularly in Maryland, where I was originally from. And I became proficient in the sport of horse racing at a very early age, and was around it through my dad for a long time. So when my young adulthood began, my dad had been transferred to Memphis. He was going out to the big Greyhound track there right across the big Mississippi River Bridge in West Memphis, Arkansas, Southland Greyhound Park, which now is Southland Casino. It's a bustling, thriving, gigantic entertainment complex in godforsaken West Memphis, Arkansas, which before was just a giant truck stop. Now they've got a luxury high-rise hotel in West Memphis. But when I first went there as a young man in the early part of the that I came here in the early 90s, in the late 1980s, I was in my early 20s, went up and visited my dad, went to college in Memphis for a couple of years, and got to know some people out at that racetrack. It was owned by a big corporation called Delaware North, who still owns Sports Service, which is a giant catering company that services national parks and stadiums all around the country. But the long and short of the story was my talents was my ability to speak and think quickly, and my expertise already, because again of my dad, in sports and racing. And lo and behold, the guy who had been the track announcer at that place, the Southland Greyhound Park, for like 30 years, was getting pretty up there in the years, and he was going to retire. So amazingly, I made a tape toward the end of the season and recorded a few races that I would call. And in greyhound racing, it's just like you hear horse racing announcers, you got to be creative and you got to be entertaining. Of course, for many years in that pursuit, it was, oh, they're off. It's 1, 5, 3, 4. In the first turn, it's 4, 2, 5, 3. I mean, it was boring. It was stupid. It was a waste of time. I was always inspired by sports announcers and horse racing announcers who were far more colorful because they had a lot more time. And the mindset at that time was, well, you don't have enough time in a 30-second race to really tell a story. Well, I just said, bull hockey on that. And my tape was so innovative from the standpoint of just I just did what I knew and what I felt. I mean, my typical call was, and they're off. That's the 8 on the outside, firing to the front, 2 up on the rails, making a big move on toward the front, 5 and 6 battling for position with the 1 and 4 as they hit the first turn with that kind of enthusiasm. And I had calls at the end that were colorful enough that by the next year, when I actually got the job, they were sending the tape to the local TV station. Now, here I'm 22 years old doing this job that the year before a 65-year-old guy was doing, boring as it was. But they were sending the tape of the first 2 races, and Big Jack Eaton, the sports anchor on the NBC affiliate, would say, "Here's Kip Keefer from the track with tonight's Daily Double." And they would play the stretch call of both of my races of the first and second race back to back. And I would have calls like there was a dog named Big Bad Wolf, which, of course, I had to invent something good for him. "It's the 8, Big Bad Wolf, who's huffed and puffed and blown this field away." So I developed my talents. I used the things that I had, and the American dream allowed me at a very young age to fall into a great position there that led to everything that I have today, because it didn't take me very long. And I made no money that first year. I was actually sleeping on coworkers' couches, sometimes smuggling in a pillow and betting down right there in the judges' stand at the track after everybody went home. My car blew up in like August. I didn't even have transportation. Thankfully, I still had a support network back in Atlanta. I'd go back and work at the Perimeter Marriott as a bellman. So I made some money in the wintertime. But I mean, sometimes you have to start with nothing and work your way up. But it didn't take very long to find out that in that business, which had been pretty much family owned, and I'm not just talking about the track in West Memphis, I'm talking about all around the country. Most of the racetracks around the country, horse and dog, had been operations that were run by family units. And there wasn't a lot of innovation. A lot of the generational thing when the next a son or a grandson inherits the reins. "Oh, no, this has always worked for us. We don't want to be innovative." I was one of the guys who really shook up my industry because I had a lot of radical ideas, and it just was my calling. I never grew up thinking I was going to be an executive in the racing business, but that's what time revealed, because once I got into it and started doing the publicity for the track in Memphis and continuing to announce and kind of innovating the business, me and several other people around the country at the same time, who are still my dear friends to this day, because we really kind of pulled the greyhound racing industry out of the doldrums of yesteryear and dragged it kicking and screaming. A lot of people thought we were radicals, but anyway, that's the story. And I only tell that story not to glorify myself, but just to say you have to develop your talents and your strengths. I heard something really interesting on Saturday. My radio partner, Terry Quillian, who lives in Willis, Texas, which is a suburb of Houston. The weather there is so volatile, as we saw with the horrible flooding and the disaster earlier this year down in Texas, which cost the lives of a number of people with the massive flash flooding and all of the volatile weather. They have these gigantic storm cells. Anyway, when she bought her new house a couple of years ago, she ordered pretty much right away a couple of generators to keep her power going in case these catastrophic storms came rumbling through and knocked out all her power for extended times. She's had those generators now for like a year and a half because the backlog of people coming to install them, and there's so much demand for their time and service. It's taken almost 14 months, 15 months for them to get her scheduled for an appointment. And thankfully this week she does have that appointment finally coming up. But it's another example of how somebody who's got a little bit of mechanical ability or has the capacity to learn. I mean, this is a great example of what happens. to make it in this world, you've got to find your niche, and you've got to be innovative, and you've got to pay attention, and you've got to keep your ears open, and you've got to be everything you see, everything you read, everything you learn. You need to use those things to kind of create the building blocks. So, hey, maybe I can take advantage of this. Maybe this is something that would be good for my future, or, my well-being. Because anybody right now in the generator business in Texas, and I imagine across a lot of Tornado Alley and other places that have natural kind of weather anomalies, it's just it just popped out when she was telling me about the wait for these installers. I kind of had in the back of my mind this kind of show to talk about the American dream is alive and well, and it is. Other things that inhibit the American dream. There are so many people that were generationally children and grandchildren and legacy people in the mining business. There's so much mining in the United States, particularly up in the Rust Belt through Pennsylvania and a lot of other places. Coal miners in West Virginia, Kentucky, that basically had their lives completely disrupted. These people grow up with generational ties to that business and were not allowed to continue because the government decided, these leftist governments, that this is bad for the environment and this is bad for these people's health. And I remember Hillary Clinton famously declaring, well, at a campaign stop, and you wonder why she didn't get elected. She was in Ohio or somewhere, and she said, well, mining as we know it is over with. We're not going to be allowing that anymore. And don't worry, we're going to retrain all the workers for another vocation. When you come from a generation of miners, having somebody say they're going to train you to be a greeter at Walmart or, work down the street at the Express Oil, that's not exactly what you want to hear. And now there are other opportunities as sensible people coming in that have screamed BS about this climate change nonsense, which of course was the bottom line. Climate change was nothing more than a device, a snake oil sold to the public that we are corrupting the planet, and all of our industrialization and revolution of all the things that we've developed are harmful to the environment. To placate this one wing of the leftist movement, that these environmental wackos, they're all throwing them a bone, all these different people, the transgender groups. There's the all-stars, the teachers union people, which once again, in the indoctrination of our youth, we don't have teachers anymore. We have activists. We have these devoted left wing, the government is your keeper, and you just you're not qualified to chart a successful course of your life. You exist, thereby you're owed something. It's all on government to take care of you and provide you opportunities. Well, that's not really what the American people said, and they don't endorse it anymore. So anyway, there's so many places coming back now. I heard an item this week where we can have a lot of possibilities, all these rare earth minerals that we really need to develop. We're buying them from all over the world. We've got a wealth of them in the United States, but they were never developed because the mining is much more difficult, say out on the deserts of Arizona, because you have to go so much deeper to get to these minerals. But now, with the innovation of this century and the highly sophisticated equipment we have, there is capacity in Arizona right now to pretty much take care of all of our rare mineral needs, which are called rare earth typically. And this could provide up to, listen to this, 400,000 jobs for people. That's a staggering number. And these are going to be highly skilled, highly paying jobs. And these are things that people that don't even have the background or the proclivity typically can be trained to do. So, there's always always possibilities. There's always things on the horizon that are promising, and we have got to stay the course. We've got to be all about individual liberty, believing in God, country, and family, and finding our niche. Because do you want to live in a country where anything's possible? If you just get on the right path and make the right moves and get a few of the right breaks, you can become just about anything that you want to be and have the life that you want to have, and carry on your legacy by having your family and your kids to live on with what you contributed. I think somebody said one of the most simple things that I've ever heard, but it resounds now as I get older, that your biggest responsibility to be on this planet is to leave it a little bit better than you found it. And you can only do that through you making as much of a contribution with your mind and your talents and your abilities, and keep that going with the legacy of your own family, teaching your children to embrace that same approach and go about that same mission, because that's what this country was founded on: the belief of the individual and the belief of the freedoms that should be guaranteed to us for freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and the individual liberty to make your own choices and plot your own course as you weave your way through this thing we call life. It's a hotel at best, folks. We're here as a guest. You got to make yourself at home while we're waiting for the rest, and live your life with those premises. Embrace what America is all about. We are in a great period right now of revitalization and renovation. We're on the right path again, and don't let the noise. Right now, we've got a mayoral race in New York. Unbelievably, there are still places in this country where people want to be given everything instead of earning it. Kami Mandami in New York is probably going to become the mayor, and he's running on free this and free that. He wants to seize public property, which is totally not permissible. He wants to run government stores for food and such. Imagine the choices that are going to be in there with the granddaddies of knowing all and telling you what you can consume and what you can buy. Let's just be cut to the chase as we wrap it up here. Socialism doesn't work. It's been tried and tried in so many places. Margaret Thatcher told us you eventually run out of other people's money. Did you see the rally last night in New York for Mondami, where AOC and Bernie Sanders, Democrat socialists, which I've told you how ridiculous that title is. It's two things that are opposite meanings. You can't have a Democrat socialist. Socialism is the absolute opposite of democracy and a representative republic. You can't be, and I've used the comparison, that would be like calling yourself a carnivorous vegan. It's just the complete definition of opposite things. So watch that race very closely. We'll see what happens. But in places like New York, where people want free busing and free child care and free food and free everything, and last night what they were chanting at the rally was, tax the rich, tax the rich. Okay, tax the rich. How many people do you think are going to stay in New York to be taxed if they have to contribute more tax money to the most prolific, highest tax rate state in the country, tax the rich more to pay for the billions of dollars this guy wants to give away for free to people that expect this because they exist? It's not going to work. It's never worked. And there will be so much flight out of New York. The greatest economic city ever conceived will be at third world hellhole at the end of this guy's term. Remember the movie Escape from New York starring Kurt Russell? He played Snake Plissken, the badass who has to go into New York. That's what it's going to look like. that movie, once again, life imitating art. I don't think they were too far off, because maybe the person who wrote that script or the original novel had a vision that New York was such a nest of lunatics that they might do this at some point, elect somebody to take their city in that direction and make it a third world crime riddled hellhole that's sealed in and guarded. Nobody can go in, nobody can go out, like in the movie Escape from New York. So, Snake Plissken, be cued, be ready to go, because if Kami Mamdani becomes the mayor, we might need Snake Plissken to go in New York in just 4 short years. That's what I thought you needed to know today, folks. A rallying cry that everybody still has access to the American dream. Find your niche, accentuate your talents, and become all you can be, and then spread it around by leaving some offspring on the planet to carry on what you have used your life to move forward. I'm Kip Keefer. Thank you for everybody listening. Appreciate my opportunity to come to you each week here on TKR. Have a blessed week, everybody, and we will be back with you next Monday right here on TKR.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.